The details of that struggle belong specially to Roman history. They have been transmitted to us only by Roman historians, and the Romans it was who were left ultimately in possession of the battlefield, that is, of Italy. It will suffice here to make known the general march of events and the most characteristic incidents. 4 distinct periods may be recognized in this history, and each marks a different phase in the course of events, and, so to speak, an act of the drama. During the first period, which lasted 42 years, from 391 to 349 BC, the Gauls carried on a war of aggression and conquest against Rome. Not that such had been their original design. On the contrary, they replied, when the Romans offered intervention between them and Clusium, we ask only for lands, of which we are in need, and Clusium has more than she can cultivate. Of the Romans we know very little, but we believe them to be a brave people. Since the Etruscans put themselves under their protection, remain spectators of our quarrel. We will settle it before your eyes, that you may report at home how far above other men the Gauls are in valor. But when they saw their pretensions repudiated and themselves treated with outrageous disdain, the Gauls left the siege of Clusium on the spot and set out for Rome, not stopping for plunder, and proclaiming everywhere on their march, we are bound for Rome, we make war on none but Romans. And when they encountered the Roman army on the 16th of July, 390 BC, at the confluence of the Allia and the Tiber, half a day's march from Rome, they abruptly struck up their war chaunt and threw themselves upon their enemies. It is well known how they gained the day, how they entered Rome and found none but a few gray beards, who, being unable or unwilling to leave their abode, had remained seated in the vestibule on their chairs of ivory, with truncheons of ivory in their hands, and decorated with the insignia of the public offices they had filled. All the people of Rome had fled, and were wandering over the country or seeking a refuge amongst neighboring peoples. Only the Senate and 1,000 warriors had shut themselves up in the capital, a citadel which commanded the city. The Gauls kept them besieged there for 7 months. The circumstances of this celebrated siege are well known, though they have been a little embellished by the Roman historians. Not that they have spoken too highly of the Romans themselves, who, in the day of their country's disaster, showed admirable courage, perseverance, and hopefulness. Pontius Cominius, who traversed the Gallic camp, swam the Tiber, and scaled by night the heights of the capital to go and carry news to the Senate. Manlius, who was the first and for some moments the only one to hold in check from the citadel's walls the Gauls on the point of effecting an entrance, and Furius Camillus, who had been banished from Rome the preceding year and had taken refuge in the town of Ardea, and who instantly took the field for his country, rallied the Roman fugitives, and incessantly harassed the Gauls, are true heroes who have earned their meed of glory. Let no man seek to lower them in public esteem. Noble actions are so beautiful, and the actors often receive so little recompense that we are at least bound to hold sacred the honor attached to their name. The Roman historians have done no more than justice in extolling the saviors of Rome, but their memory would have suffered no loss had the whole truth been made known, and the claims of national vanity are not of the same weight as the duty one owes to truth. Now it is certain that Camillus did not gain such decisive advantages over the Gauls as the Roman accounts would lead one to believe, and that the deliverance of Rome was much less complete. On the 13th of February, 389 BC, the Gauls, it is true, allowed their retreat to be purchased by the Romans, and they experienced as they retired certain checks whereby they lost a part of their booty. But 23 years afterwards, they are found in Latium scouring in every direction the outlying country of Rome, without the Romans daring to go out and fight them. It was only at the end of 5 years, in the year 361 BC, that, the very city being menaced anew, the legions marched out to meet the enemy. Surprised at this audacity, says Polybius, the Gauls fell back, but merely a few leagues from Rome, to the environs of Tibur, and thence, for the space of 12 years, they attacked the Roman territory, renewing the campaign every year, often reaching the very gates of the city, and being repulsed indeed, but never farther than Tibur and its slopes. Rome, however, made great efforts. Every war with the Gauls was previously proclaimed a tumult, which involved a levy in mass of the citizens, without any exemption, even for old men and priests. A treasure specially dedicated to Gaelic wars was laid by in the capital, and religious denunciations of the most awful kind hung over the head of whoever should dare to touch it, no matter what the exigency might be. To this epoch belonged those marvels of daring recorded in Roman tradition, those acts of heroism tinged with fable, which are met with amongst so many peoples, either in their earliest age or in their days of great peril. In the year 361 BC, Titus Manlius, son of him who had saved the capital from the night attack of the Gauls, and 12 years later M. Valerius, a young military tribune, where it will be remembered the 2 Roman heroes who vanquished in single combat the 2 Gallic giants who insolently defied Rome. The gratitude towards them was general and of long duration. For 2 centuries afterwards, in the year 167 BC, the head of the Gaul, with his tongue out, still appeared at Rome above the shop of a money changer, on a circular signboard called the Cimbrian Shield, Scutum Cimbricum. After 17 years' stay in Latium, the Gauls at last withdrew and returned to their adopted country in those lovely valleys of the Po, which already bore the name of Cisalpine Gaul. They began to get disgusted with a wandering life. Their population multiplied. Their towns spread. Their fields were better cultivated. Their manners became less barbarous. For 50 years, there was scarcely any trace of hostility or even contact between them and the Romans. But at the beginning of the 3rd century before our era, the coalition of the Samnites and Etruscans against Rome was near its climax. They eagerly pressed the Gauls to join, and the latter assented easily. Then commenced a second period of struggles between the 2 peoples. Rome had taken breath and had grown much more rapidly than her rivals. Instead of shutting herself up as heretofore within her walls, she forthwith raised 3 armies, took the offensive against the coalitionists, and carried the war into their territory. The Etruscans rushed to the defense of their hearths. The 2 consuls, Fabius and Decius, immediately attacked the Samnites and Gauls at the foot of the Apennines, close to Sentinum, now Sentina. The battle was just beginning when a hind, pursued by a wolf from the mountains, passed in flight between the 2 armies and threw herself upon the side of the Gauls, who slew her. The wolf turned towards the Romans, who let him go. "Comrades," cried a soldier, "flight and death are on the side where you see stretched on the ground the hind of Diana." The wolf belongs to Mars. He is unwounded and reminds us of our Father and Founder. We shall conquer even as He. Nevertheless, the battle went badly for the Romans. Several legions were in flight, and Decius strove vainly to rally them. The memory of his father came across his mind. There was a belief amongst the Romans that if, in the midst of an unsuccessful engagement, the general devoted himself to the infernal gods, panic and flight passed forthwith to the enemy's ranks. "Why dally?" said Decius to the Grand Pontiff, whom he had ordered to follow him and keep at his side in the flight. "'Tis given to our race to die, to avert public disasters." He halted, placed a javelin beneath his feet, and, covering his head with a fold of his robe and supporting his chin on his right hand, repeated after the pontiff this sacred form of words: "Janus, Jupiter, our father Mars, Quirinus, Bellona Lares. Ye gods, in whose power are we and our enemies, gods, manes, ye I adore, ye I pray, ye I adjure, to give strength and victory to the Roman people, the children of Quirinus, and to send confusion, panic, and death amongst the enemies of the Roman people, the children of Quirinus." And in these words, for the republic of the children of Quirinus, for the army, for the legions, and for the allies of the Roman people, I devote to the god Manes and to the grave the legions and the allies of the enemy and myself. Then, remounting, Decius charged into the middle of the Gauls, where he soon fell pierced with wounds. But the Romans recovered courage and gained the day, for heroism and piety have power over the hearts of men, so that at the moment of admiration they become capable of imitation. During this second period, Rome was more than once in danger. In the year 283 BC, the Gauls destroyed one of her armies near Arezzo, and advanced to the Roman frontier, saying, "We are bound for Rome. The Gauls know how to take it." 72 years afterwards, the Cisalpine Gauls swore they would not put off their baldricks till they had mounted the capital, and they arrived within 3 days' march of Rome. At every appearance of this formidable enemy, the alarm at Rome was great. The Senate raised all its forces and summoned its allies. The people demanded a consultation of the Sibylline book, sacred volumes sold, it was said, to Tarquinius Priscus by the Sibyl Almathea, and containing the secret of the destinies of the Republic. They were actually opened in the year 228 BC, and it was with terror found that the Gauls would twice take possession of the soil of Rome. On the advice of the priests, there was dug within the city, in the middle of the cattle market, a huge pit, in which 2 Gauls, a man and a woman, were entombed alive. For thus they took possession of the soil of Rome. The oracle was fulfilled and the mishap averted. 13 years afterwards, on occasion of the disaster at Cannae, the same atrocity was again committed, at the same place and for the same cause, and by a strange contrast, there was, at the committing of this barbarous act, which was against Roman usage, says Livy, a secret feeling of horror, for to appease the manes of the victims, a sacrifice was instituted, which was celebrated every year at the pit in the month of November. In spite of sometimes urgent peril, in spite of popular alarms, Rome, during the course of this period from 299 to 258 BC, maintained an increasing ascendancy over the Gauls. She always cleared them off. Her territory several times ravaged theirs on the two banks of the Po, called respectively Transpadan and Cispadan Gaul, and gained the majority of the great battles she had to fight. Finally, in the year 283 BC, the propraetor Drusus, after having ravaged the country of the Senonic Gauls, carried off the very ingots and jewels, it was said, which had been given to their ancestors as the price of their retreat. Solemn proclamation was made that the ransom of the capital had turned within its walls, and 60 years afterwards the consul M. C.L. Marcellus, having defeated at Clastidium a numerous army of Gauls, and with his own hand slain the general Verdumar, had the honor of dedicating to the temple of Jupiter the third grand spoils taken since the foundation of Rome, and of ascending the Capitol, himself conveying the armor of Verdumar, for he had got hewn and oaken trunk, round which he had arranged the helmet, tunic, and breastplate of the barbarian king. Nor was war Rome's only weapon against her enemies. Besides the ability of her generals and the discipline of her legions, she had the sagacity of her senate. The Gauls were not wanting in intelligence or dexterity, but being too free to go quietly under a master's hand, and too barbarous for self-government, carried away as they were by the interest or passion of the moment, they could not long act, either in concert or with sameness of purpose. Farsightedness and the spirit of persistence were, on the contrary, the familiar virtues of the Roman senate.